says I'm live. Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome. So I've got this strap here. I can lift it up with my other hand. I've got this sling on my arm. Lots of you know that I just had surgery on my shoulder here, and I am starting my rehab. I completely ripped out one of my rotator cuff muscles in a freak fall, but it was actually a second injury for the same muscle. And so here I am now on the other side of the surgery, and I'm going to be doing my very best to get back. You can imagine, because it's my right hand, that, I can't shake a pan like I used to. I can't chop like I used to. So we've stockpiled a bunch of videos for YouTube, and we're going to be releasing them over the next few weeks until I can actually get back to being able to chop and slice and dice and be able to saute stuff in a good pan. So we welcome to all of you who have not been on one of these kinds of chats before. I will say that the way that we run these chats is that I don't look at anything before we start. I welcome any kind of question, and you're going to get my immediate response to all of those things. I'm going to start with some of these wonderful questions that were asked before we actually went live. And then my dear friend over here, Casey Cora, will be sending me a whole bunch of the new ones that come up. So please ask your questions, and I will get to as many as I can. I will say we have never had this many questions asked in advance. So I apologize deeply if I don't get to your question. I will do my very best to get to as many questions as I possibly can at this moment, during this time of this question and answer series. But if I don't, please forgive me for not answering your question. Okay, so I'm going to start. I have my phone here. Casey is sending me the questions by text so that I can go one after another. And so please send your questions directly to the chat here, and he will look at them all. Frank Campos says, can you explain the proper way to prepare eggplant cooking? For example, and how to salt the eggplant, when do you remove the skin, etc. I see a lot of different information out there, and I am curious as to what is facts or fiction. There is no fact or fiction in it. You can do kind of anything because everything that everybody says is okay. You have to figure out what you like. Okay, I'll tell you what I like. I leave the skin on because I don't mind the skin. Some people hate the skin of eggplant. Second thing is I like smaller eggplants, not bigger eggplants. If I get a big eggplant, I'm probably going to roast it and turn it into baba ganoush or something like that. If I have a smaller eggplant, I will cut it up into small dice, and I will either roast it or pan roast it. And I love that texture that I get out of that. How do you pan roast? Put some oil in a pan. Basically, it's kind of like sauteing. And you can do it in the oven, or you can do it all in stovetop. If it's stovetop, it's entirely sauteing basically, but you have to get the oil hot and then add the eggplant to it. Now, all about that salting before you actually work with the eggplant, that's much more important for big eggplants than small eggplants. I typically choose like the Japanese style eggplants, or my new favorite, just because they're so beautiful, graffiti eggplants that are the light and dark colored on the outside of them. Look for those because they're just beautiful to put out in your kitchen and enjoy before you chop them up and use them. They are very similar in texture to the Japanese eggplant. But I really love working with them because they're not bitter, and you can chop them up and roast them or pan roast them and be into something that is absolutely delicious. Just know this: eggplant it's like a sponge. It will absorb a lot of oil. So choose how much oil you want the eggplant to have. If you're going to roast it in an oven, and I use my toaster oven to roast eggplant all the time, chop up your eggplant, toss it with salt and some olive oil, a good amount of olive oil, but not too much. Put it in at like 400 degrees, roast it, and you will have a beautiful product. It will be creamy on the inside and not just oil soaked. Sauteing tends to make it more oil soaked. Okay. That may be more than you ever wanted to know about eggplant, but I'm sorry. I understand why you're asking all the questions, Frank, but I honestly, it's not as hard as people make it seem. Angelica says, any advice for my son who will be going to culinary school here in Chicago? Absolutely. It's all about your instructors. It's not about the curriculum. It's about the instructors. Yeah, it's about the curriculum. You got to learn the curriculum, but it's really all about getting to know the instructors. So keep pestering your son about who is he vibing with, who is he getting to know, because really it's so much about that relationship. And then encourage your son to get to know instructors who know working chefs, because honest to God, it's really all about the person that you can get an apprenticeship or internship with. Honestly, it's a lot about that. So like, have your son find somebody that can be a mentor, and people that are in culinary schools, teaching culinary schools, are really good mentors. Find his mentor, and then make sure that that person knows who he can get your son connected with for an internship. The internship is in some ways as important as culinary school. Not completely, but it is very important. Tammy Maloney, hello. It's lovely to have you here. Do you use a garlic press, or do you prefer to crush or use the back of the knife? I know it has different flavors depending on whether you crush or dice. Yes, it does. When I wrote the book that I did with my daughter, I used the garlic press constantly because that's what my daughter could use. And so I say, use it if that is your thing. If it's not your thing, then go another direction. I have recently been super into just using a microplane grater and grating the garlic. And I'm a dice. I feel really comfortable with the knife in my hand. So most of the time I just take a clove of garlic and chop it up, and I just keep going back and forth, rocking and chopping across it until I get a mince. And that takes me very little time. But sometimes I'm kind of lazy, and I'll just grab my microplane grater and grate it on the microplane. That is as good as doing it, crushing it through the garlic press. But at the same time, I think if you're going to cook it, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another. I don't think it's really necessarily something that we have to say one is better than the other. Okay, so next one here is from M. Oliveros. Have you ever come across a dish or ingredient that you could not consume or use in a recipe? Oh my goodness. God, there's some really weird stuff out there. So I will tell you the story of when I was in the market in Juchitán, Oaxaca, 38 years ago. And I'd been set up to stay with a family in Juchitán. Now, if you guys don't know what Juchitán is, okay, so it's the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. So where Mexico becomes incredibly narrow, the place that was on the track to become the Panama Canal, but they lost that and Panama won it. But it's a very narrow stretch before Mexico opens up into the Yucatan Peninsula. And so Tehuantepec down there, it's a very specific Zapotec area. very different than the Zapotec region of the Central Valleys, where I spend a fair amount of time. So we were invited to cook with a family down there. And so my wife and I were down there. And this, by the way, for all of you who want to know, was 42. It was not 30 some years ago. It was 42 years ago, because it was on our honeymoon trip. And I do not recommend this for anybody on their honeymoon trip. But I have an intrepid wife who actually lived through this whole thing. Okay, so we go with the family to the market. And what they serve to us is these soft-boiled turtle eggs. So for all of you that red flags went up for me too, but I was being hosted by a family, and no one should ever be doing turtle eggs. Nobody should ever be soft boiling turtle eggs. And then after they soft boiled them, they put them in pickled jalapeno juice. And then they said, this is the most special thing that we can offer you. So when you're in a situation like that, you probably don't, well, at least I don't, start preaching to them about ecology and what they should be doing. I just said, thank you, and tried to eat this thing. Okay, so what it really is a ping pong ball. It's the size of a ping pong ball. And that ping pong ball is soft on the outside, but it's leathery at the same time. And so you actually have to bite into it. I'm sorry if I'm grossing you all out with this, but anyway, you have to bite into it, and then this soft boiled egg sort of plunks out into your mouth. That was the hardest thing I've ever tried to eat. Now, I've eaten lots of insects. Probably a lot of you would say the insects would be the hardest things that you have, but those are not hard for me. The soft-boiled turtle egg was definitely the hardest thing that I've ever come across. From RG, you say, would you adapt your goat lamb birria recipe to beef? What salsas and sides to birria are authentic in Mexico? Which ones do you recommend? Absolutely, you can do it with beef. If you want to have a great experience, then I'm just going to say use beef short rib. Beef short rib birria is pretty amazing stuff. So choose it, do it. You got the bone in there. Get the regular English cut of not the flanken cut, not like you would find in the Korean restaurants, but the regular English cut. And then do regular birria with it. It's really delicious. I will say, in my house, if you were coming to my house and I was going to do for you short rib birria, I would do a red chili sauce on the side. So that red chili sauce would probably be, I would either go with the arbol salsa, which is toasted arbols blended with roasted garlic and water and salt, really bright, straightforward. Or I would do something like a roasted tomatillo and chipotle salsa, which is way mellower, and a lot of people would like that. I would do beans on the side, because I think that birria and beans are just like a match made in heaven. A bunch of tortillas, and if you want to balance it off for American guests, a big beautiful salad is very welcome. I like it. Honestly, I would serve it with a salad on the side, and just let it be. That's really all you need to make a great birria dish. Think about short rib, because I think it's really good. Okay, so from Carlos Alfora, I hope I've pronounced your name right. What stores in Chicago do you recommend for buying herbs and spices? And if you don't have any from your garden? Okay, so I will say that if you go to the Spice House over in Old Town, you can find really good quality things. That doesn't mean that they're good quality necessarily for Mexican food, though they have a few things over there that are. They tend to do more international stuff, and like not very far from there, you could go to a small grocery store that's on Ashland, a couple blocks south of North Avenue. You could go to Guanajuato, and they have a whole display of really great Mexican herbs. Is it as good as what you'd find at, say, Casa del Pueblo down in Pilsen? No, it's not. So if you're really looking for a great variety of the dried Mexican herbs, then go to Casa del Pueblo, or fresh Mexican herbs, because honestly, they have a greater variety down at Casa del Pueblo than I've seen in pretty much any other grocery store. So that kind of gets you started on all of that. But I will say certain herbs are better dried and certain herbs are better fresh. So I know everybody is always asking me this question about epazote. So they say, oh no, I buy dried epazote at my Mexican market. That is not a culinary herb. That is a medicinal herb. And so don't use it in your beans. That's not what it's intended for. It's intended for steeping with water and taking as a tea for medicinal reasons. But if you want epazote, you have to go to fresh, and you have to use fresh epazote. So if you live in a place where there is fresh epazote, and we're super lucky in Chicago, I get it, but we can go to any of the Mexican grocery stores and they have fresh epazote. But I will say to you, it is so easy to grow. Buy a packet of epazote seeds, and then just know one thing about epazote. Before it goes to seed, please cut it down, because it will seed your entire yard, and then the next season you will have nothing but epazote everywhere. So that's my comment about epazote and doing those things. Okay, produce section. Do you have any recommendations on any sparkling wines from Mexico that we can access here in the U.S.? So every state is really different. So I don't know where you live, and I don't know what you can access. If you can get the Casa de Piedra sparkling, that is just totally amazing. But there are a lot of other ones available in different places. So when you ask me these questions, tell me where you are so that I can kind of help you to find out what it is that you're perhaps looking for. But I will say the Casa de Piedra sparkling is probably my favorite current. But from the Valle de Guadalupe, there are a number of other sparklings that are being released like right now that are really delicious. And so this is what I do. Like, I'll go into a wine store and I will say, do you have anything from Mexico? And then go look at what they have. If they have something, if the only thing that they have is from one of the big producers like LA Cheto, then it's probably going to be their regular release. And it's fine, but it's not great. So look to see if they have anything beyond one of the big producers. Santo Tomas is another big producer, but they tend to be like a step above the basic releases from LA Cheto. So look for something like that. Maybe look for the Casa Madero stuff that comes from the oldest winery in all of Latin America, which is a really cool and great thing. It's in a very different climate, so it doesn't necessarily always produce the best wines, in my opinion, but they have some really great stuff. So maybe you look for some stuff from Casa Madero, and then once you get past the big guys, then it's like you can find all kinds of really wonderful small boutique producers. Okay, next question here is coming from Tim F. What is a quick recipe for the chipotle mustard sauce and cilantro crema cubana torta? Oh man, that's a harder one. Okay, so here it is. So get grainy mustard and put chopped canned chipotle in it. Okay, that's the basic mustard sauce. Very straightforward, that. Cilantro crema, that is the Baja version of crema, which is half cream, but good cream. Okay, not your regular sour cream in the store is probably a little bit too acidic for this. So say Mexican crema or creme fraiche. So it's half that, half mayonnaise. You mix those two things together, my favorite crema in the world, and then chop up cilantro and add it to that. And then you have something really remarkable. So grainy mustard with canned chipotle chopped together, everything together. You could do it in a food processor if you want to make a bigger batch. And then the half mayo, half crema with cilantro. You can't go wrong with either one of those things. They're just like super delicious. Okay. Marcos Salgado, what do you think about wheat tortillas? What are wheat tortillas? No, I know what wheat tortillas are. Okay. So like Mexico is the land of corn. Mexicans are the people of corn. Wheat was brought by the Spaniards. Wheat grows really beautifully in the northern part of Mexico, but not so much in other parts of Mexico. When I lived in Mexico full time 40 years ago, like I would ask people about flour tortillas, and most of the people that I hung out with had never even heard of them. They didn't even know they existed. Okay. So I would say when you go to northern Mexico, especially like I've had this great opportunity to cook with a lot of people in Baja where they make a lot of flour tortillas and in the northern part of Sonora, and they make flour tortillas with lard that would make you weep. They are so incredibly delicious. Those are spectacular, but that's not the flour tortillas that most people have in the United States. Those handmade ones are spectacular. And by the way, I will just throw this out there for those of you that are going to go to the Valle de Guadalupe. Go to Doña Estela to have breakfast. It's super famous. All you have to say is Doña Estela, and everybody will point you in the right direction. But I will say that you have your big savory breakfast. Do not miss the lamb for breakfast, okay? I know everybody thinks that that's a weird thing to have for lamb, but not at Doña Estela. It is definitely what you need to have. But the handmade flour tortillas there are spectacular. So it's about where you are and what the food is, whether I would recommend flour or corn tortillas. But the statistics are this. In Mexico, 90% of the tortillas that are eaten are corn, 10% are flour. In the US, 90% are flour and 10% are corn. So I represent, or try my best to represent, the cuisine of Mexico, especially central and southern Mexico, and it's all about corn tortillas. And so that's what I really talk about the most. Okay, we're going down here to Judith G. Are you doing chiles en nogada at Frontera this year? And if so, when? Only, like you're gonna hate me for this, but okay, so in Frontera and Topolo and Barsótano, we are doing chiles en nogada on 16 de septiembre, the 16th of September. And we are only going to do them this year because probably you've heard that we don't have a lot of staff in the restaurants anymore. And we're trying to rebuild, but it's a long and hard rebuilding. But right now we have the staff to do chiles en nogada one day, and it's going to be on Mexican Independence Day, 16 de septiembre. So please join us for that. Veronica K says, do you make your mole with chocolate or peanut butter or both? Okay, so at the risk of like sort of going off into a deep end. You have to understand that I'm a person that believes like in the integrity of the traditional Mexican kitchen with all of my heart and soul. Honest to God, I Mexican cooks have embodied more technique and more tradition than anywhere else on earth. And I know we're all supposed to say that no, the French kitchen or the Italian kitchen or the Chinese kitchen has done more, but I don't know if that's really true. I think that maybe the Mexican kitchen is at least on the same par, maybe even more. Okay. And so when I was at dinner one time, when somebody said to me that, like, I don't know why you fuss over mole so much, because I can make a really good mole by just mixing some chili powder with some peanut butter and some Hershey's syrup. And literally, I couldn't speak for like minutes because I wanted to say that, first of all, there's so much racial stuff in that and so much disrespect for indigenous cuisines. And I'm sorry, I can't deal with it. So I will say, when I make mole, we start with chili pods. We start with herbs and spices. They're all whole. We start with peanuts, sesame seeds, almonds, sometimes pecans, depending on what the recipe is, what we're going for. And then at the very end, we add some really fresh ground chocolate to it. But it's added as a spice. It's not added to cover over bad technique. And I hope that I hope I gave an answer to you without jumping off the deep end. But I will say that making mole is one of the most complex things in the entire world, and that anybody that thinks that they can jump in and make a mole is fooling themselves completely. It takes. I spent 10 full years going to Oaxaca every year and making mole negro, black mole, with cooks in Oaxaca before I would put it on my menu in Topolo, because I didn't think I could get it exactly right so that any Oaxacan grandmother would walk into my place and go, yeah, you got it. I didn't think I had that for 10 full years, because it takes a lot of time to actually master all of that. Okay, so the next question is from William G. Can you talk about stainless steel grill grates versus cast iron grill grates? I typically go for the cast iron grill grates. They're a little bit more available than cast iron grill grates, but I am super lucky to have one of the Kalamazoo grills, which has a stainless steel grill grates on it, and they're spectacular, but they're super heavy and super thick and all of that. I will say that the thing that I don't like is chrome grill grates, the kind that typically come with most grills. And I have just been known, if all I had was those chrome grill grates, to take another cast iron grill grate and just lay it on top and just heat it up. Sometimes we're asked to go away from town and do events, and so I know it's really heavy, but honest to God, I do this. It's like in my luggage, I will pack cast iron grill grates, because I know that that's what I need to be able to get the right char on something, because cast iron really holds the heat beautifully. It distributes the heat beautifully. So I really love cast iron grill grates, and I think they're way easier to get. But you have to treat them exactly like you treat a cast iron pan, okay? So once you've finished and they've cooled down, then use your whatever you call it, your brush on them, and get them really clean. Coat them with enough oil while they're still warm so that it absorbs into them. And to honest to God, I bring my cast iron grill grates inside most of the time so that humidity from outside, because Chicago can be incredibly humid. I bring it inside, and I just keep them inside so that they don't rust on me at all. So treat them just like you would a cast iron pan. Okay, next question here comes from Ricardo Robles. Hey Rick, I currently live in Northern California, but I am from Mexicali. Mexicali. It's a great place. Food is really good there. I agree with that. Lots of Chinese influence. Have you ever been there? And what do you think about the food from Baja? Super easy. Mexicali is like an amazing place because there's so many Chinese that settle there that the food is distinctive and really interesting. And there are so many people that have migrated from Mexicali that have Chinese heritage through the rest of Baja. And I think that makes the Baja cuisine really fascinating. So I'm going to say to all of the people that have joined us today that if you're interested in a really remarkable getaway, I always send people to Mexico City, but I'm going to send you right now, fly from wherever you live to San Diego, and then rent a car and go across the border. You got to get it set up that you can take the car across the border, but go across the border and then go to Tijuana. And there are so many amazing places to go in Tijuana. Go on a taco crawl of Tijuana because that's really amazing. Go to the Benito Juarez market there because so many people have immigrated from Oaxaca up to Tijuana. And so you get this like incredible market that's in northern Baja, but it's got all these Oaxacan ingredients. There's lots of places to eat, to get a snack. Don't miss getting tacos at Fitos. That is a street stall right across from the entrance to the market. There are so many great places around Tijuana, but then I'm like a wine geek, and so I go straight south toward Ensenada, go into the Valle de Guadalupe and enjoy that. But you can go like other directions. You could go to Mexicali, and you could go over there and you could have amazing food in Mexicali. You could go over into the top of the Sea of Cortez and go down that side of the peninsula and enjoy amazing seafood. I mean, it was Jacques Cousteau who said that the Sea of Cortez is the aquarium to the world. And so the amount of like snorkeling and scuba diving and deep sea fishing that you can do over there is just really, really remarkable. So that's one of my encouragements to all of you is to plan that as one of your trips. Okay, next question here is from D. Van Martin. Do they grow a lot of olives around Veracruz? Actually, they don't grow so many there. They outgrow them in Baja. Mostly in Baja is the place that you will find the big olive groves. Veracruz is the place where they use the most olives, but they grow them in the climate that is more appropriate, more Mediterranean, which is the climate around Baja. There's massive amounts in Baja. Okay, from Chris Stanifer, can you do an episode on the proper way to make chochoyotes and some recipes with them? Yeah, sure. So for those of you that don't know what chochoyotes are, it's a masa dumpling. And it's a kind of interesting thing because a lot of times when you find them in Mexico, they tend to be kind of dense and heavy, but they don't have to be dense and heavy. So it is masa that you would use to make tortillas. That's what it's usually made from. And you add a little bit of fat to it. It could be pork fat. It could be a little bit of oil that you add to it. Mix that in, some salt. And then you roll these little things that are like marbles. And then you put your thumb in them to make an umbligo, a belly button in the middle of them. And then you poach those in the sauce that you're going to serve them with, or some people poach them in water. And we find in our restaurant that they actually work really well if you steam them. So yeah, I think I should do something on chochorotes because I always think of them as being a little bit like Mexican gnocchi. So if you like the texture of gnocchi, especially potato gnocchi, that's going to give you something that you could relate to when you get to the chochorotes. So I really love them. Uh, Matthias. I don't know how you pronounce your first name. Um, I'm going to call you Matt to start here. Okay, Matt asks, are there any dishes you believe you haven't perfected and still still needs more work? Um, all you have to do is ask my wife that question, and she would say, "Yeah, pretty much everything." I am one of those people that every day is a new day. When I'm making something, even something that I've made over and over and over again, my mind is always thinking, is there a way that I could make this different? Could I make it better? Or like if I did this to it, would I like it even better? And that just is about one thing. And I want to really drive this home for everybody. There is no perfect dish. There is only your perfect dish in a moment. Okay. So whatever it is that you are making, hopefully you love what you have made at that moment. It doesn't mean that you're going to love that same dish 10 days from now. You may think of some other way you want to make it, and then that will be your perfect dish. And that is what is so amazing about food, is that it can constantly evolve and change. And I don't ever believe in perfection in the kitchen. I just believe in a perfect moment. And that perfect moment is your perfect moment. And there is nothing that will ever come in the way of that. Okay, next one here was from Ian Pope. Absolutely love your Oaxacan black mole recipe. I gotta come. I think I've missed. Excuse me. I got knocked out here. Okay, your black mole recipe that you cooked for Obama. What was that experience like? Thank you for asking that. That's like one of the highlights of my entire life. Making black mole in the White House kitchen was trepidatious, to say the least, because right down the hall from that kitchen is the West Wing, and I just was super, super worried that the smells of toasting chilies were going to get down to the West Wing, and that I was going to be kicked out before we even got started. But the chef of the White House, Chris Comerford, was amazing. And she said, no, we've put in a new ventilation system. I think you can do it as long as you only do a few chilies at a time. And so I did a few chilies at a time. 10 hours I stayed at that stove and made black mole for the president of Mexico and the president of our country. And it was my most memorable, obviously. Well, okay, so I also did that same thing for Top Chef Masters, and that's what they said won me that, and that was the dish that I worked on for 10 years before I put it on a restaurant menu. So anyway, I made that black mole. It was remarkable to be in that place and to make that. And to make something that wasn't like European based, and to be able to make it for the president of Mexico and his wife, and then all the rest of the people that came, and to actually represent what I've been in love with for most of my adult life, and that is, or from all of my adult life, and that is the food of Mexico, because I think it's so underrated. It's so beautiful, and it's something that everyone should cherish. And we got a chance to actually present it at the White House, and I was super excited about that. I could talk on for like 45 minutes or an hour about what the experience was like. It's not about the food. I'll just tell you about that. We had to serve 5 courses in 50 minutes, and so that means that nobody gets to actually complete a dish, which is kind of weird, but I will say that it was remarkable to be able to just do it. And I'm really honored that I got a chance to do that. Okay, somebody with a really long name here that ends in Daddylicious. How long did it take you to learn Spanish, and how old were you when you started trying? Um, uh, Grade school, and then I went through 4 years of Spanish in high school in 3 years, coupled with 3 years of French, and then entered college after my junior year of high school to be a Spanish major, and tested out of all of the basic stuff so that I could get right into studying literature. And then I studied literature, Spanish literature in college. That was my big focus, that and Latin American culture. And I have just lived in that world. But I will tell you that every single day I study Spanish, every single day. I follow all these people on Instagram that are always putting out stuff. I am on lots of email lists that send me stuff every day. I read and study Spanish every single day because my Spanish is perfect in the kitchen. And then when I get out of the kitchen, I sound a little bit like a sixth grader. But it's because I don't live in that world all the time. But I love it, and I'm a believer that language opens you to culture. And as long as you don't have the language, you don't have the culture. And so you have to do anything you can to get a certain proficiency in the language to be able to understand the culture. But I honestly, I study Spanish every single day, and that was my major in college. Okay, so I keep doing all of that stuff. Okay, next one is from Bubba Franks. Rick, I recently saw you on an episode of Simply Ming where you served up a bourbon cocktail. That was probably Ming. It was like, I'm not sure I would have done the bourbon cocktail. Maybe I did do it. Maybe he made me do a bourbon cocktail. I don't know. And you said you're actually a big bourbon fan. I am a big bourbon fan. All of that. What are some of your favorite bourbons? Okay, so I don't know. I don't, that's super hard to answer because, yes, I mean, we can all say that we love Elijah Craig and the 12-year-old or the 24-year-old or whatever it is that you can't get, and that if we do get it, that we imagine that it's the best thing that we've ever eaten or drunk, I should say. But I'm just going to say, it's like most bourbon is good, right? I mean, it's so regulated in how it's made that it's good stuff. And I like bourbon cocktails. I like drinking bourbon straight. I'm just going to say that I really think there is a lot of good bourbon out there. So I'm going to avoid the answer to that question because there's a lot of good ones. Really, there's a lot of good ones. AM says, have you ever tried tacos de canasta? Of course I've tried tacos de canasta, but it's a very unique experience. For those of you that don't know what tacos de canasta are, I will say that it's a big Mexico City thing. You can find them a few other places, but Mexico City is really the place that you would do it. And so the tortilla is quick fried. So it's softened in oil, but it's not crisp. And then you smear it with the fillings and you fold it over. So you have to think of tacos de canasta, I think, not as a taco, as a full taco experience, as much as a beautifully flavored tortilla experience, because they'll say you can buy 5 for 10 pesos. So 5 for 50 cents. They're not expensive at all. And the people that sell them oftentimes have them in big baskets. And if you go into the Centro Histórico, the old downtown center of Mexico City, there will be a lot of people with bikes, and they will be selling tacos de canasta. And they will stop and they will sell you your 5 or your 10, and then you get them on a piece of paper and you eat them. And it's a way to assuage hunger. it's not a big culinary experience. It's a small culinary experience, and I'll tell you, some of them are just amazingly good, and they have a huge cult following. So if you go to Mexico City, try tacos de canasta. Okay, next one here from Guillermo Simon, or Guillermo Simon. Can you talk a little bit about traditional Mexican candy? Which one's your favorite candy? Without a doubt, Northern Mexico, Glorias are my favorite of the candies from Mexico, but there's a lot of really good ones. And so what I'm going to encourage everybody, and you can go to your local Mexican grocery store and find these, okay, the mazapanes. So there's a one, and they have a little red flower on the top of them, and I'm not sure I can remember the name of it. I think the name of it is that rosa or something like that, the name of the flower. Anyway, so that is a sort of shortbread marzipan made from peanuts, and you eat it and it becomes total sand in your mouth. And the first time you have it, you might not understand what you're having. The second time you have it, you'll kind of go like, oh yeah, man, this is kind of good. And then the third time you have it, you're hooked, man. And then you just want the mazapanes. And so I really love those. I think those are really delicious. But, I will say that a lot of the handmade ones that you'll find on the streets in Mexico that are made from caramelized sugar and nuts or seeds are absolutely spectacular. Most places they will call them palanquetas, but they have other names in different places in Mexico. But it's basically caramelized sugar to which you would add toasted sesame seeds or toasted pumpkin seeds or toasted peanuts to it. Sometimes other things get added into them, but man, they are so good. And you know what they are? You know why I think they're so good is that they're completely elemental and transparent. There is nothing fancy about the way that they are made. It is really natural product from beginning to end, and I just absolutely love that stuff. So look for that when you're in Mexico. But if you ever get a chance to have the Glorias from Northern Mexico, it's a caramel that is with pecans in it. Pecans are native to northern Mexico, and so that's why you find a lot of that sort of stuff. And then you can find actually the Glorias that also have the fig that grows in northern Mexico added into it, a dried fig. That's really delicious too. But just the straight Glorias are just really, really amazing things. So that always comes to my mind first. Jay Guy says, is it worth smoking / drying your own chilies? My garden is overproducing on jalapenos poblanos. I can buy the chipotle and the ancho cheap. Is this worth my time? Usually not. I will say if you have a lot of them to deal with, then honestly, I think freezing is the best thing to do with them. And you can put them straight into the freezer or roast them first and then put them into the freezer, which is what a lot of people in the southwestern part of the United States do. But smoke drying them, you can try it. I think it's a very, very technically demanding thing to get right. So you can do it and have fun doing it and then make your sauces and salsas out of it and you'll be happy. But I will say that it might not be as good as what you can buy for a lot less money when you go to a Mexican grocery store, especially. But the one thing that I do a lot is I roast a lot of the fresh chilies and then they'll collapse when you roast them. So I collapse them down and then I just put them into freezer bags, flatten them out and put them in my freezer. And then you can just pull them out, peel the roasted exterior off of them, and you've got them when you're doing that, I cut the seed pod off so I can flatten them completely and they don't take up much space at all in your freezer. And that's a way to preserve them that I think is actually better, and you'll I enjoy them more that way than trying to dry them. The only chili that we dry um, for our restaurant is a chili chihuahua, which is an indigenous variety from Oaxaca, and it's used in making black mole. And we have one farmer that grows it for us, and we dry that one so that we can use it all winter when he's not producing. And that is the only one that we find that it's really useful drying. And you really do need a dehydrator to do it well. Okay, next one here comes from Logan. He's 12 years old. Hi, Logan. What is the best way to start cooking at a young age? Or if you have any tips for me, I make pork chops and pancakes, which you should. And I just started learning to do upside down cake, which you should also do. Okay, so here's the thing. There is nothing that you cannot tackle. Okay, I don't believe it when people tell you that this is a kid recipe and this is the one that you have to follow. And I'm saying this as when I was your age, I wasn't listening to anybody. I was cooking stuff out of Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking because that's what I wanted to cook. And I knew that I didn't have all the skills, but the only way I was going to get those skills was to actually cook through those things. So at 12 years old, I put away all the kids' cookbooks that people had given me, and I started cooking everything that I just wanted to learn how to make. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing because there's nothing that is beyond your ability. There are things that you could learn at 12 are things that somebody at 25 couldn't learn. Okay, but you have the ability to learn that because you're motivated to do it. So I'm just going to encourage you. I'm talking to myself here, my 12-year-old self, that go ahead and do it. If that's what's interesting to you, then do it. And I love the idea that you've got specialties, because I love your idea that you're doing pork chops and you're doing an upside down cake, which is like so rewarding to turn that thing upside down and hear it drop out of the pan and know that you've made something that most people wouldn't ever even tackle. Hey, I just taught a 55-year-old friend how to make upside down cake, and she was so thrilled to do it. And here at 12, you're already mastering upside down cake. So just keep at it, keep cooking, because that's the most important thing. You're exactly where you need to be. Just keep plowing through. Find something you want to tackle and don't listen to anybody that says it's beyond your pay grade, because it's not. Somebody named Positive Being, which I absolutely love. Is there any special punch bowl drink that you make during the holidays in Mexico? Of course there is. Okay, so I can't give you all the details of it because I too have to actually look up the recipe because I only make it once a year. But on our YouTube channel, we have ponche, Ponche. We have the recipe on that and also a video on how to make it. And that is the perfect punch bowl drink. I mean, it's called ponche, that you could do for the holidays. It's typically served warm because, in Mexico, because of the climate there, it doesn't get super cold. I mean, I think it gets really cold there, but when you're raised with no heating, then you just put on sweaters and you just think that that's the way it is. But it's not like the, pardon me, below zero temperatures that we have in Chicago. But people always want to have that warm beverage. And it is really spectacular. And if you live anywhere near a Mexican grocery store during the holiday season, they will usually bring in all the ingredients to do it because they're not ingredients that you find in your regular grocery store. So you're not going to if you really want to make it, you're going to need guavas, your fresh guavas. You're going to need some sugar cane, tejocotes, if you can find them, called hawthorns in English. But the rest of the stuff is all there. And in the frozen food section of a lot of the Mexican grocery stores, you can find all this stuff as well. So that gives you a whole lot of stuff. Now, we are coming down to the end here, so I'm going to take my last question. And again, I will just say, for those of you that have never tuned into this before, I will say this is like one of my favorite things in the world to do. I love getting all these questions, and I love being able to just give you my gut reactions to them. And so I apologize if I didn't get to your question, but I hope you enjoyed hearing my gut reactions to a lot of other people's questions. But the last one that I'm taking tonight, it comes from Tom Shipman. Have all your cooks been to culinary school? I was really impressed with the diversity of your kitchen staff. It's very diverse, that's for sure. And we're very proud of that. And I will say no. I'm a believer in culinary school, but I am not a believer in selling your soul to culinary school. So I believe that you should go to culinary school on a scholarship, man. Try to find some way to get through culinary school so that you get a broader perspective and a respect for the craft that we work with. Can you get those things working in a kitchen and coming up through the ranks? Yes, but only if you apply yourself. So that says that, man, if you're going to make it without culinary school, you need to read constantly, buy the textbooks from culinary school, go through them, quiz yourself on the stuff, make sure you've learned all the stuff so that when your chef says to you, make that hollandaise sauce, that you go, yes, chef, and you go and make that hollandaise sauce. You don't go, I've never made a hollandaise sauce before. Because what you learn in culinary school is the answers to all of those things the chef will ask you to do. And so you really need to be able to be in the conversation where somebody says to you, make that hollandaise sauce, but you're going to make it with half oil instead of half and all butter. And what I'm going to say to you is, I want you to put a little Szechuan peppercorn in, but I want you to put it in at the very last minute. I don't want you to put it in when you're starting to put the butter in there, and that you understand all of that. That you understand how to make it all. And that is why culinary school is important if you really, really want to get ahead. And I will say that almost everybody, but not everybody in our kitchens that have risen to the very top have been to culinary school. But not all of them, because we have some really bright people on our staff that have applied themselves, and man, they know it all. They didn't have to go to school to learn it. And so it is very important to me that culinary school not seem like the be all end all, because I have been with culinary school graduates that know nothing. And it's all about going all the way back to where we started today. Someone who asked about her son going to culinary school. It's all about your mentorship. Who did you get in contact with in culinary school? Who did you work with? Who became your mentor? Who helped you find the perfect place to do your internship? All of those things are what you go to culinary school for, as well as learning the basic curriculum. But to tell you the truth, you can teach yourself the basic curriculum. So there's lots more that I have to say about culinary school and jump starting through something that can get you into kitchens, but that's for another time, I think. So I'm just going to say thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. This has been spectacular for me. I hope it's been enjoyable for you at least, but it's been spectacular for me. Remember, people, subscribe. Tell your friends, please, who love Mexican food, that we have so many videos on YouTube. Please subscribe. Get your friends to subscribe to our channel. We want to share with as many people as possible. And as my shoulder is healing here, I'm planning another live cook-along. So I don't know how many of you joined us for the live cook-along the last time, but that was I have to wait till I can actually work with the skillet in my hand. I'm right-handed, and that was my right shoulder that got repaired. So anyway, it'll be a few weeks, and we will let you guys know. But I love doing those too because they give us an opportunity to interact with each other, and for me to answer your questions in live time, and for you to cook along with me and to learn as we're going slowly through something, not fast, how I approach something. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly did, and I will see you all the next time.